Hi, thanks for watching BibleMountain.com. In this video we're going to read from Exodus 20 and 21 and talk about men and women are different. Liberals and feminists claim men and women are equal and should be treated the same. What we're going to see in Exodus 21 is that God has a history of treating men and women differently. And then we're going to look at 1 Corinthians 11 and learn that even today, men and women are different and they need to be treated differently. Men and women have to behave differently. So let's get started at Exodus 20. The context of this is that God has just given the 10 Commandments to the Israelites, and now in verse 22, God continues his instructions to the Israelites, and he's speaking through Moses. And so as we resume reading here in verse 22, it is Yahweh speaking to Moses. Then Yahweh said to Moses, "Thus you shall say to the sons of Israel, you yourselves have seen that I have spoken to you from heaven." Now notice the words, "I have spoken." God is clearly reminding the Israelites that it is He Himself, it is God, it is Yahweh, who gave them the 10 Commandments. He is the one that gave them the instructions that they are supposed to follow. Let's continue reading there at verse 23. And again, this is Yahweh's message to the Israelites. "You shall not make other gods besides me. Gods of silver or gods of gold you shall not make for yourselves." So notice the words "shall not." This is something that they were prohibited from doing. Let's resume reading at 24. "You shall make an altar of earth for me, and you shall sacrifice on it your burnt offerings and your peace offerings, your sheep and your oxen. In every place where I cause my name to be remembered, I will come to you and bless you." So here, notice the word "shall." This is something that they were supposed to do. They were supposed to make an altar. They were supposed to offer their sacrifices. Verse 25. "If you make an altar of stone for me, you shall not build it of cut stones, for if you wield your tool on it, you will profane it." Again, we see the words "shall not." This is something that they were not supposed to do. And then verse 26. "And you shall not go up by steps to my altar, so that your nakedness will not be exposed on it." And so again, we see here, we see the words "shall not." This is something that they were prohibited from doing. And what we see in this is God reminding the Israelites that it's He Himself who is giving them these instructions. And He gives them instructions here about their altar and how to build it and how to approach it. And now in the next verses, we're going to get into some instructions about slaves and how to treat your slaves. And again, the context here is this is God speaking, and He has the right, He has the authority to tell humans how to live. So let's pick up reading at chapter 21, verse 1. And again, this is Yahweh speaking to Moses, and He's giving them instructions and ordinances that He's supposed to pass along to the Israelites. "Now these are the ordinances which you are to set before the Israelites. If you buy a Hebrew slave, he," notice the pronoun he, we're talking about male slaves at this point. "If you buy a Hebrew slave, he shall serve for 6 years, but on the 7th he shall go out as a free man without payment. If he comes alone, he shall go out alone. If he is the husband of a wife, then his wife shall go out with him. If his master gives him a wife, and she bears him sons or daughters, the wife and her children shall belong to her master, and he shall go out alone. But if the slave plainly says, 'I love my master, my wife, and my children, I will not go out as a free man,' then his master shall bring him to God, then he shall bring him to the door or the doorpost, and his master shall pierce his ear with an awl, and he shall serve him permanently." And so again, these are instructions for how to treat male slaves. Now let's pick up reading at verse 7. "If a man sells his daughter as a female slave, she is not to go free as the male slaves do." So notice we're talking about females here. And notice the word "not." There's a contrast here. The female slaves were treated differently than the male slaves. So let's resume reading at verse 8. "If she is displeasing in the eyes of her master who designated her for himself, he shall let her be redeemed. He does not have authority to sell her to a foreign people because of his unfairness to her. If he designates her for his son, he shall deal with her according to the custom of daughters. If he takes to himself another woman, he may not reduce her food, her clothing, or her conjugal rights. If he will not do these 3 things for her, then she shall go out for nothing without payment of money." So again, we see differences between the male slaves and the female slaves. The male slaves had a right to go free after a while. The female slaves did not. Now let's look at some verses in 1 Corinthians 11. And as we read these verses, notice the differences between men and women. Notice the differences in how men and women are to behave. Verse 3. But I want you to understand that Christ is the head of every man, and the man is the head of every woman, and God is the head of Christ. Verse 4. Every man who has something on his head while praying or prophesying disgraces his head. But every woman who has her head uncovered while praying or prophesying disgraces her head, for she is one and the same as the woman whose head is shaved. So we see differences here. Men disgraced their head when they prayed with their head covered. Women disgraced their head when they prayed with their head uncovered. And let's look at verse 7. For a man ought not to have his head covered, since he is the image and glory of God, but the woman is the glory of man. So here we see another difference between men and women. Men are the glory of God. Women are the glory of men. So again, liberals and feminists claim men and women are equal, and they claim that men and women should be treated the same. But Exodus 21 shows us God has a history of treating men and women differently. And then 1 Corinthians 11 teaches us that even today, men and women are different. Men and women have to behave differently, and we need to treat men and women differently because men and women are different. If you haven't already joined my email list, please do so. First of all, it is free. By signing up, you will get immediate access to my videos whenever they are released, because they'll be delivered right to your email inbox. This is the best way to make sure you don't miss out on any of my free content. In order to sign up, go to BibleMountain.com, click on follow, and there will be a place there to enter your email address. Once again, thank you for watching BibleMountain.com.